then we'll have question and answer time at the end of the presentation. So I guess if you think of questions as I'm presenting, that's fine. You can type them through as a chat message or a question, but they won't be answered until the end of the presentation. It'd be great if you can just raise your hand to make sure that you can hear me. So just let me know that you can hear what I'm saying by raising your hand. Okay, that's great. Looks like we've got a few people there raising their hands, so that's fantastic. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. All right, we'll kick the webinar off. It's about 11:30 now. So first of all, obviously my name's Kent Watson. My role at A2K Technologies is technical consultant, and I spend most of my time on the help desk. So there's a few names there that I recognise from the help desk. So welcome. It's good to have you all here. And let's kick off. So I'll just wait for the screen to catch up. All right, so basically the outline, we're going to have a good look at network licensing, and then we'll have a bit of a look at the user rights, proxies and ports, and you know, some requirements, etc., for Revit Server, Vault, and Plant, and using SQL with Plant. All right. So basically, you know, most larger offices will have a network licenses. So you'll be using the LM tool to distribute those licenses. So what I want to have a look at here as a starting point is how the client or the workstation finds the license manager and how it obtains its license from the license manager. So when a user starts their application, you know, be it AutoCAD or Inventor or Revit or whatever the case may be, it goes and looks for a ADSK flex _license _file environment variable. I've just got that hyperlink, so we'll just click on that and bring up a web page here. So this will do a PDF version of the PowerPoint that people can have access to as well, with the hyperlinks contained in there. But you can see in here, this describes how to go about the setting up that environment variable. It's not set up by default, okay? It's something that you can set up, and it's, as it sort of indicates down here, it's something where you can set up for distributed servers as well. So if you've got multiple offices throughout the country that are connected via a WAN, then you can specify the order in which it will search those servers for a license. All right, so in the case here, if it looks at server 1 and the license is not available there, then it'll move to server 2, etc. Okay. All right, so if there is no environment variable or it can't find a license there, it'll also look in a registry key location, okay, and it will then, you know, find basically the name of the server, etc., in the registry key. If that's not available or it can't find anything there as well, then it'll go to the lickpath.lick file, which is found in the product install directory. Finally, if there's no license available from there, it then moves and we get the familiar license finder dialog box, okay, where we've actually then got to specify a server name. All right, at any point, if we get a yes, then it's going to communicate from the workstation or the client machine through to the server. It's going to communicate through ports 2080 and 27,000 through to and including 27,009. So you might want to have exceptions for those port numbers in your firewall. Okay, one of the ways to actually test those ports, that you can communicate through those ports, is to use Internet Explorer. And I'm just bringing up a web page here that will demonstrate that. Now, basically being able to ping the server does not necessarily mean that you will be able to get a license, okay? Because it does need to communicate through those particular port numbers. And so you can see from the screen here that you can use Internet Explorer and enter those different values, and if it's communicating successfully, you'll get that kind of a result. Okay? All right. So if it communicates successfully through those ports, then obviously it gets to the license manager and the license is obtained. Now, these ports down here, 27,000 through to and including 27,009, basically it searches in order. So if port 27,000 is in use by a different service, then it'll simply move to port 27,001. Okay. All right, the cascading sequence, obviously there's the 2014 cascading sequence as well, and that's easily found just by doing a quick Google search. You can do Autodesk, 2014 cascading sequence will come up with that. And shortly you should be able to see the cascading sequence from that link. It looks like there's just a bit of lag happening there, that the screen hasn't moved on. Okay, so there we are. All right, so you can see the cascading sequence there. Starts with AutoCAD. All right, and then from your network licenses, it just moves through the list of products in the order that you see here. So if you're starting AutoCAD, it's just going to go through there. So if you've got a product design suite standard, it'll grab that. Building design suite standard comes after the product design suite, etc. All right. So we'll just wait for the screen to catch up. But while we're waiting for that, basically the idea of the cascading sequence is that the product will consume the lowest value product first. Okay. So, if we start AutoCAD, then the lowest value product will be an AutoCAD license. If it can't find any AutoCAD licenses, then it'll move on and consume the next highest value license. So, for example, Building Design Suite Premium, if they're all consumed, then it'll go to the Infrastructure Design Suite and the Building Design Suite. All right. So there's various ways in which we can manage the usage of licenses, and anybody that's using a network license in my opinion, should have the options file. Alright, so basically, I just come back here, I think I've got the options file. So this is a link on how to use the options file. That should catch up shortly. So basically, with the options file, there's various things that we can do. You can see, while we're waiting for it to catch up, you can see the top one in the list there is a timeout all. And essentially what that means is that we can time out an inactive license. So for example, if an engineer has an AutoCAD license and they get called out to site and they leave AutoCAD running on their computer, after a set period of time, typically we recommend between half an hour and an hour, that license gets returned back to the server, okay, and becomes available for other people to use. All right. So essentially, we can just sort of move through. There's various different settings in there, but you can see the web page there. We'll just have a look at some of the other settings. Some of the other settings is reserve, so we can actually reserve licenses for a group of users, which is quite handy for the for engineers, etc. So we can, or draftees, you may want to reserve 5 licenses for draftees because you have a team of 5 draftees, and that might then leave 1 extra license available for engineers to consume, for example. The max option there limits the number of licenses a user or group of users can use. The include determines which user or group of users has exclusivity to a license. Another one that I think is important is the max borrow hours, which specifies the number of hours a license can be borrowed for. And the reason you want that is if somebody borrows a license for 6 months, which is the max, that if there's no setting for the max borrow hours, that's what it will be the maximum of is 6 months. Then something happens to their computer, gets dropped out of the truck or something like that, then that license will not be returned for 6 months. Okay, so in other words, you'll be down a license in your license pool for 6 months. Now, just on the timeout all, we actually have a bit of a graph here of the advantage of using the timeout tool. Okay, so we just see there basically the blue line. This is from an actual usage chart. All right, so the blue line indicates without using the timeout, and the green line indicates if you're using the timeout function. So you can see with the timeout on, obviously they have about a 12 license pool, and with the timeout on, they're only ever using 8 licenses. So we hear reports of, sort of around the 20% mark. You need 20% less licenses with the timeout function. So that's something valuable there. So back to the cascading. So if we combine some cascading with some options files, we'll just wait for the screen to catch up. Basically, we can create groups of users. So in the examples we're going to have a look at here, we might have a group of users for civil designers, another group for structural designers, and another group for BIM managers, for example. And we'll just do some includes on those. So, for example, the civil designers, we would do an include, say, for the infrastructure design suite. For the structural designers, we would do an include for the Building Design Suite Premium, and then for the BIM managers, etc., that may be wanting to get Navisworks, then we can do the include for BIM managers, which would give them the Building Design Suite Advanced. So what that would mean is if a civil designer started AutoCAD, for example, and we had that pool of licenses as before, where it was AutoCAD, Building Design Suite, Infrastructure Design Suite, and Building Design Suite Ultimate, what we would find is that the civil designer would look for an AutoCAD license first. If there were no AutoCAD licenses available, it would then move to an Infrastructure Design Suite license. Okay, they would not get the access to the others because we've had include on the other licenses as well for the other groups. Seems to be taking a little while for that screen to catch up. There it is there. Okay. So because the Building Design Suite licenses are reserved or included for the structural, in other words, the structural designers group has exclusive usage of that. Same, the Building Design Suite is exclusive to the BIM managers. Then the civil designers will they'll go for AutoCAD or for Infrastructure Design Suite. Now, just on that, if the civil designer did start AutoCAD and then and it grabbed an AutoCAD license and then they started, say, Civil 3D, it would then return the AutoCAD license and consume the Infrastructure Design Suite license. All right, so the next one then is if the structural designer starts AutoCAD, basically you can see the same thing, so except this time it's going to the Building Design Suite Premium because that's the include for them. Then if your BIM managers had an include on the Building Design Suite group, if your BIM managers had an include on were part of the structural designers group as well as part of the BIM managers group, then we would get that scenario happening there. Right, so just having a look at the License Manager, the current version of the License Manager for 2014 is 11.11, and we've got a hyperlink there also on how to configure LM tools. Some of the key things I think for IT here, apart from sort of understanding how to configure LM tools, which is outlined in the hyperlink, is the understanding of how the IPv4 and IPv6 affects the License Manager. So the newer server operating systems all have IPv6 enabled by default, and many people may not actually be using IPv6. However, if it is enabled, then you need to install the IPv6 version of LM Tools. Otherwise, you'll have issues where the workstations, they'll appear to get a license for a while, and then it can end up dropping out as it's unable to resolve the DNS connections, etc. So I've also got a hyperlink there for upgrading LM Tools from an older version to a current version. It's also important to note that with the LM Tools and the ADSK Flex vendor daemon will only support one service for the Autodesk products. All right. So if you have multiple Autodesk products, then you need to actually combine them into a single license file, and once again there's a hyperlink there for that. That's just a simple process of opening the license files in Notepad, copy the contents of one license file and paste it into the contents of another one. There's also a hyperlink there that has some excellent information about the license manager, etc., from JTB World. So that's worth a look at as well. In terms of when you get a license file, you may want to know what products are included in that license file, and the license parser, once again, I've got a hyperlink to that. The license parser is an excellent tool to see what products are in your license file. Okay. Please note that just because the product shows in the license parser does not necessarily mean that it will work in your license file. If the license has been requested incorrectly, such as you requested it with the wrong MAC address and you've put it into a license file, a combined license file, then that particular product will not necessarily work because it's been requested with the wrong MAC address, but it will show in the license parser. So just use the license parser as a guide. It's not there to say this is exactly how the license file will work. It's just a good way to visualize what licenses are included in that license file. Okay, so up the top there it does give you the computer name and the MAC address, and which I've taken out obviously for security reasons, but and also serial numbers will show up down the side there. Now you may want to monitor the network license usage so that you can be prepared for future requirements. As new projects start, etc., you can know what your license pool is, and essentially, if you've got a new project coming up where you need more staff, more contract staff, etc., you want to know that you're going to have the amount of licenses required to complete that task. So, there are programs such as there's light programs such as the JTB Flex Report Lite. Which is an excellent program. You can see some screen captures there of how that works. If you show the HTML report for the JTB Flex Report Lite, it actually tells you, lists all the products that are being used by whom, if they're borrowed, etc. If you want to, and they're all free, the light applications. If you want to go to the full applications, such as the full JTB Flex report, then you'll see, you'll get full graphics, etc., and a history of the usage over time, which is really quite helpful for anticipating future requirements. All right, so just having a look at some of the user rights, etc. here. Obviously, we're going to install as administrator, okay? And it's important to note that if you've got restricted users, that the restricted users are only tested by Autodesk as a default out-of-the-box Microsoft restricted user and roaming users. That's what AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT are tested against. So if you add additional levels of restrictions, then it can't be guaranteed that things will work. The hyperlink I have there will give you some testing techniques to try and determine what restrictions, etc., may be causing issues. Of course, with Windows, Vista, and 7, etc., we want to disable the user account control, particularly for installation purposes. But it's also, most of the Autodesk programs tend to run much better with the user account control disabled. Some other things that I guess aren't necessarily user rights, but we do find that corrupt Windows user profiles can often cause issues. It's always a good troubleshooting technique to just log on to the computer as a different user and see if you're having the same sort of problems with that particular application when logged on as a different user. There's also, from a user permissions thing, you've got to look at your folder redirection and restrictions, etc. So there's obviously Autodesk products are looking at particular folders, and you need to ascertain or make sure that they have the appropriate permissions for the programs to work. Some of the proxies that you want to make sure you have allowed through your proxy server are listed there. Okay, and we also have a list of ports there. So Vault likes to use port 80. So make sure these ports are open in your firewalls. Other programs can consume, such as Skype, can use port 80 and cause issues with Vault. So just be aware of that. Obviously, the Network License Manager, we've already discussed the ports of 2080, etc. there. Revit Server and the proxies that we're seeing there by default use ports 80 and 443. So just good to have all of those open. All right, just while we wait for the screen capture to, the next screen to come up there, there are the issues with Revit Server. So that basically, the best advice we can give with Revit Server, most of the instances we see relate to not having checked off all the requirements now, the installation requirements, etc. And the prerequisites are all available on the wiki help, the Autodesk wiki help for Revit, and a quick Google search of Revit Server installation should reveal the wiki help website. So all the information you need are on there. And I would strongly recommend, if you're installing Revit Server, just make sure you go, have a printout of all the prerequisites, etc., and double check it and tick it off the printout as you go through. Most of the issues we see relate to, the prerequisites not being in place. So, just a few things there is to enable, the TCP port sharing and port activation, every instance of file and printer sharing in the Windows Firewall Exceptions tab. Okay, so they're sort of some of the main ones there, and you can see the others there. From a Vault point of view, as with the Revit Server, IIS7 is important. You've got to have that enabled. And look, once again, you can see I've got the hyperlink there to the advanced configuration, and that really has everything that you need to know about installing Vault. Also, if Vault's perhaps not performing as well as you think it should, there are some performance enhancements there that you can make, and once again, the hyperlink there contains all that information. Just be aware that the default install of the ADMS console will install the SQL Express 32-bit. So if you're wanting the 64-bit, it's best to install that first, and the advanced configuration guide will explain how to go through that, or how to install ADMS with an instance of SQL already installed. And if you're needing larger database sizes or more people connecting to the SQL, then you're going to need more than SQL Express. Okay, you might need to look at upgrading to the full SQL to get your best out of Vault if you've got a larger environment. The plan for the plant users, by default, a project created in Plant 3D uses an SQLite or SQLite, and they recommend that if you've got sort of 4 or 5 users or more working on a particular project, that it's good to convert your project to an SQL Server based project rather than using the SQLite project. And the reason for that is basically SQLite is a self-contained serverless zero configuration transactional SQL database engine, which means there is no separate database server required. That's the advantage of it. The database engine is embedded and installed with the program, so that's great. SQLite uses a file-based system, so each database is a single file stored on the disk. Okay, and this is where the issue, if you've got multiple users, comes in. So the SQLite database engine uses a read many to write once record locking scheme, which simply means multiple people can be reading the file, but if anybody's trying to enter data into the file, the entire database will be locked while they try to enter the data into the file. So obviously the more people you have working on a project, that's going to become an issue. So that's why you then would move to an SQL server, which simply locks a single row or a single record in the database rather than locking the entire database. Okay. Before migrating to SQL Server, you perhaps need to look at the project portability, okay, and how you're going to have people working on the project. The other advantage of going to the SQL Server for Plant 3D is that there is now an integration with Vault, which is great. Obviously, depending on which database you use, the SQLite or the SQL Server environment, that's dependent on how you start the project. All right, so whenever you start a project, you get to determine whether it will be an SQL Server or an SQLite scenario. If you are using the SQL Server environment and you have any sort of connection issues or any sort of issue at all, you can see at the last point there is actually a file called the PNP local data cache purger.exe, and I would strongly recommend, if you're having any issues at all in the SQL Server environment, that you run that exe, and it will clear things out, and it often solves many issues, some that you may not think would even solve, but it's certainly worth running just to make sure that it's not going to solve your issues. So that about sums it up. So thank you for your time today. I know everybody's time is very valuable. I hope you've gained some good information there. And if you've got any questions, please put them through and I'll do my best to answer them. I see we've got a few there. Okay. Just have a look and see what I can find. So the slideshow will be available for download. Yep, and we'll have a recording as well. Okay, so a question here: how does if the license is returned to the server due to timeout, how does that affect the running product and possibly any unsaved work? That's an excellent question. So what will happen there is when the user comes back and tries to do some work, if there is still a license available, they won't know that the license has been returned. All right. If the license has been consumed by somebody else and there are no more licenses available, then what will happen is a screen will pop up just asking him to or her to save their work and close the software down. If they ignore that message, then they would run into problems. So it would be obviously worthwhile making sure that they know if they get that message that they need to do just that, save their work and close down, because if they ignore it and try to add extra work, then they won't be able to save it. It is a fairly intrusive message, so they would have to be quite conscious about ignoring it. AutoCAD electrical in the Cascade list, that's a good question. Probably because it's in the product design suite, I'm guessing. I think you'll also find that Civil 3D is not in the Cascade list as well. Okay, teaming your network cards. You can do that. It's not particularly supported, but yes, we certainly have many people doing that. Basically, from my experience, is it creates some sort of, I guess, a virtual MAC address or NIC address, and that's the one that you use to create your license file. Obviously, you want to make sure that that's static and not going to change next time you reboot the server or anything. Okay, so there's a mention here of, Revit Server struggling on large projects. Certainly we've seen issues where it does struggle and other issues where it doesn't. Citrix is obviously a solution to that. So just be aware that a bunch of the Autodesk products are Citrix ready. It does require some configuration. Yes, Vault. The question is, does Vault only work with Microsoft SQL, or can you use MySQL? No, it only works with Microsoft SQL. It doesn't work with any of the other databases. Once again, some questions about Revit and Citrix. So basically, there is a fair amount of configuration required for Revit and on Citrix. We actually partner with with a company in the UK that specialises in Citrix and CAD software. So there are some tweaks. I know people use the set up information on the Autodesk wiki help, but that doesn't necessarily for, say that the 2013-14 products give you the best results. And the guys that we partner with over in the UK can certainly get you the best results with Citrix. Well, I think that looks like most of the questions that I have there. I will just say this, the 2014 products, if you've got a USB stick for one of the premium suites or higher, so premium or ultimate suites, you'll find that the installer is only a 64-bit installer on the 2014 ultimate or premium suites. So if you do have a 32-bit machines, then you need to go to the download method for that, just to make you aware of that one. Thanks everyone for your participation. I'll get that one out. And yeah, as I said, I hope you found some good value in that for you. Thank you and bye.